Good morning. I'm not used to saying that. Welcome to another episode of Unstoppable Overcomers, and we have the amazing Dr. Christy in the house. Good morning, Dr. Christy. How are you?
Good morning, Dorothy. I'm fantastic. How are you?
I'm super excited for you because I don't know if anybody in Facebook land, YouTube land, or LinkedIn land has heard, but Dr. Christy has just come out with an amazing book. Tell us all about it, Christy.
Well, Dorothy, first off, thank you so much for having me today. So this is it. Is it going to come across? Actually, it looks like it's the right way. Fantastic. Sometimes the camera is flipped. So this is the book. It's called Coordinating the Chaos. It just got published literally like 36 hours ago.
Let's give Christy applause. That, like, if you've never written a book before, it's like giving birth all over again. And she's writing a book about giving birth.
About giving birth, yes. So it's a whole new kind of baby.
Yes.
Yeah, Dorothy, it's so interesting that, this entire process has been very surreal for me. I shouldn't say I never expected to write a book, but it wasn't like top of my priority list. In fact, the way that this even came out was last year, say January-ish, I was hoping and shooting to start doing some speaking events do some weekend workshops to empower parents to step into their strengths and be truly present with their children and take, parents from like the pregnancy stage all the way up and through how to keep themselves healthy and sane and keep their babies and children healthy in the process as they grow. And as I was preparing this and ready to start my first weekend workshop, COVID kind of happened and speaking engagements weren't really a thing anymore. So the stuff that I had planned in my heart to do in these in-person events wasn't really conducive to doing them virtually. And to be honest, virtually isn't my thing. I like interacting with people more so than just on a two-dimensional screen. No offense.
Taken.
But so that's kind of where this ended up coming from. It was a good friend of mine and coach that said, we'll start writing it down because there's tons of people who've done speaking events based off the books that they've written or vice versa. And then it just ends up kind of feeding into each other. So that's kind of where it happened. And it was up and down along the way. I had to start over a couple different times for several different reasons. But it's done. And it was a very surreal experience. I know you know how this works. It was very, like literally 9:47 Tuesday night, I click on this email that's like, congratulations, your book has been published. And it was this weird excitement, yet that's it. No balloons or confetti, just an email that says, congratulations, it's done. So it's been fun and interesting. And I'm super excited to share it with everybody. So what do you want to know? What can I tell you about it?
That is so phenomenal. And like you said, when you write a book, you're like, yes, it's done. And then when you get it to the editor, yes, that's another step. And then when you get it to the publisher, it's like, yes. And then you asked me this question yesterday. How were you feeling? And then I felt, for me anyways, it was like, oh shit, now I got to get it to the masses. And how do I do that? So it's, and especially like, well, you're more popular than I was when I had my book first done. But, everybody loves Dr. Christy. And if you don't know this woman, you definitely should. She is a holistic chiropractor on top of a mom of 3 and an amazing wife to her husband, Jason. And she helps so many people. Like, it's not even funny. Just getting them where they're supposed to be at holistically and cracking those bones when needed.
Yes.
When needed. So, but all that to say, so what can we expect out of your book? What truly is the book all about?
Yeah. So I tried to take what I feel like was a unique and a little bit of a different approach, because most books on the market for early parenthood and supporting moms in the stage of life either come from a physician's perspective, which is all the medical background of this is what you expect, this is what you do, and the remote blah, 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 blah. Or they come from a mother's perspective where just like, oh, everything is a mess and let's just laugh our way through everything. And both of those have immense value. And I feel like I'm in a unique enough position to put those together so that I can provide a different set of guidance through my own experience, the experience of the patients that I've seen over the last 12 years, and just really get deep enough to, coming from the mother's perspective. Yeah, I understand. Motherhood sucks sometimes. We can just get that out there. It's rough. That's why it's called Coordinating the Chaos, because I have a lot of it in my world. And when I was actually coming up with the title, I thought Calming the Chaos, and I thought that had a nice ring to it. But A, there were a ton of books with that title already. And B, I can't tell people how to calm the chaos. I truly don't calm it in my daily life. So I think I'd be living a lie if I tried to call it that. And so when coordinating came into my space, I was like, that's more accurate, actually, because it's just about juggling different balls that you have in the air at any given time. And so with this particular, I truly believe that at some point this is going to become a series, that, you know, this is more targeted towards the first year, year and a half, maybe up to 2 years so of life, as your baby starts to grow. And then let's face it, the chaos doesn't stop when they're 2. In fact, it probably gets higher. Mm-hmm. So I plan to have future books kind of going through each stage of life. But in particular in this one, like the first parts of it, I share a lot of my experience, you know, especially for people and women who are trying to live more holistically, do things a bit more naturally, even give birth naturally. Being who I am, I always wanted to give birth 100% naturally, have no interventions, no epidurals, no nothing. And with my first experience, as I share in the book, none of that happened. And it was devastating to me. It was one of those things that I actually had to truly grieve my birth experience because it didn't come out the way that I wanted. Now, I go through all this, but it's like they always say, well, the most important thing is that mom and baby are healthy. Yes, 100%. That's always the most important thing. And it's not the only important thing, because when you go through something that intimate and that vulnerable, you feel like your heart's been cut in two when you don't get that experience that you kind of half hope and expect. And, you know, we as women are taught that this is what our body's meant to do. Our body's meant to give birth. Our bodies are meant to breastfeed. And if it doesn't happen the way that they, quote unquote, say it should or is expected to, you feel like, at least I did, I feel like less of a woman. I feel like less of a person. And that sucked. And, you know, too many people go through postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety. And I apparently went through it and didn't even realize I was going through it until my oldest was 2 years old. And I kind of looked back and was like, yeah, the last 2 years of my life have kind of been a blur, and I don't really know who I am anymore. I don't know what this world is all about, and I kind of feel like shit. And it was at that moment that I started reflecting, yeah, I think I kind of had some postpartum depression, and this is when he's 2 or almost 2. And I had to kind of, at that point, figure out how to take my life back. And over that time, before I got pregnant with our then second, and then moving forward, I was able to do that. And it took a lot of work and a lot of focus and self-awareness to go from that point to, I feel like, where I am now. And it's always much easier to say these things in hindsight. Yeah. But at the same time, I also feel like if we have a village of support around us that's not only going through it at the same time and or has been through it and can provide different perspectives along the way, I just feel like if I had read something similar to what I've written when I was in that position, I would have felt more supported and like I could have gotten through it easier.
Right. And that's the thing, like, okay, so I've never given birth. I do have a stepson, and when I first met him, he was 5, so I don't know what it's like to have any of this. So I'm trying to relate. The chaos
you
part.
You can imagine.
The chaos part and having a child in your life, I totally get, trust me. You know, and then it's like your life is not your own because now you have to take care of this human, or humans in your case, you know, and on top of having the balance of a husband, on top of having the balance of a career, on top of having the balance of everything. You know, I can't imagine having a baby and trying to coordinate all of that. Because I mean, I just couldn't imagine it. I don't have to. I'm 45. I don't think the baby's in my life, but you know, at least with this book, like, women know that, number one, they're not alone in the nightmare that they're going through at the moment. And I'm sure it's a nightmare. Hey, you haven't slept in days because your kid won't let you.
Weeks, months.
Yeah, exactly.
Years.
18 years. And nowadays it's not 18 and out because, you know, with the price of housing, they can't afford to get their own housing. So they're stuck with you for life.
Right. And you said it so beautifully that, like, well, first of all, parts of it are a nightmare. And of course, I don't know about you, but, you know, myself included, and many women that I've talked to in this phase of life is like, you say some parts of our nightmare and then you feel guilty because this is supposed to be the most joyous, most beautiful experience you've ever cherished in your entire life. And don't get me wrong, parts of it are, like, literally parts of my heart and soul are in each of my kids, and that's never going to be separated. And it doesn't mean sometimes it's not hard, you know? And you also said so many, like, you're playing all these different roles. It's like now you're responsible for all these new little humans, and your needs suddenly no longer exist. And you're just suddenly this person. You're just mom. You're no longer even your first name or your work name or whatever. You're just mom. And you kind of mildly go through like a mini identity crisis in some of that. And it's about making sure that you can stay true to yourself and stay in your own strength and your own power, because your baby is going to look up to you in the growing years, energetically, even, before they're even consciously aware of what's happening, and they can model your behavior. They pick up on that. And so if you're anxious and you don't feel happy and you're depressed and you're just not present, they're going to pick up on that. And quite frankly, between us, my kids are not listening right now, I see how that all played out through my kids, like all of their different personalities and all of their different natures totally are mirrored in their birth experiences and how I was when I was first parenting them as they were babies and growing. Like, my littlest one is totally the most chill of all of them. He's got the most ridiculous, just doesn't care about anything personality. And he was a home birth and he was the third born. So I was kind of like, well, third child, you're just going to get what you get. And there's something to be said for that, though, because, when we let the pressure off of ourselves of being these like magically perfect parents, because it doesn't exist, when we let the pressure off ourselves, they can grow and thrive a little bit better, I would say. And I shouldn't say better, because they're all going to be perfect exactly as they are. It's just interesting to see some of those differences.
And that's so true, because we're all different. We're raised by the same parents, but yet we can be so different. I see that in my own life. Like, my brother and I are complete opposites, and the same parents, the same everything. And I'm thinking, how can that be? I don't know if it's because I'm the oldest, that I am the more responsible one. I don't know.
There is something to be said for birth order. And to be truthfully honest, I did not think that there was like a big birth order thing until I had my third. And then I was like, oh, birth order is a thing. And it's interesting. And it's not the only thing, of course. But it certainly, I think, plays a role over time as they grow. Just a different dynamic. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. With that being said, because you always hear about the middle child, right? The middle child survives. The middle child is the wild child and the one that gives you the most trouble. Would you say that's true?
A little bit.
Okay, so what did you do differently with that birth than the rest of them?
Spoiler. You get all my birth stories in the book as well. But I'll give you a small spoiler alert, and then I won't go into the rest of the story. You'll have to read it for that part. He was born in the car. So, par for the course.
Born in the car.
He was born in the car. Like, literally, I had a car delivery.
Okay, because my mind instantly
not conceived in the car, born in the car.
Okay, well, my parents have said this, so even though this is going everywhere, it doesn't really matter. I was conceived in a Murphy bed in a Catholic church. So what does that really say? Like, my parents' friends lived in the church apartment, an apartment above the church. And that night there was a storm and there was no room. So my parents ended up sleeping in the church itself. So,
it's
they
a
were married
beautiful
people. They were
spiritual
married.
Place. I mean,
exactly.
And there's nothing wrong with, doing an act that ends up conceiving a child. It's beautiful. So I think that's great.
That's hilarious. Yes. Now,
so
my parents I might get smacked for that. But anyways, Bridget's with us, and Bridget loves that.
Hi, thanks for joining.
Yeah, thank you. So, so he's born in the car. So
yeah, so we had three very different birth experiences, and I will go through all of these. Like I said, I'm not going to spoil all of it, but like my first was a very long, drawn out labor and delivery that I had a lot of interventions that I didn't want, that made me feel like less of a human, less of a woman. And it started a whole series of self-deprecating thoughts and stuff for me. So that was my first experience. Second experience, very, very different, all natural, born in the car on the way to the hospital. And the third one, it was like, well, clearly we're not meant to do it the way I thought I had to do it. And so he was born at home. And seeing those different experiences and kind of how they manifest in their personalities is really beautiful and interesting. And then, of course, there's more that, contributes to who they become as people.
Right. and get your book. And where can we get the book?
So you can get it on my website, which is christymatusiakdc.com. There's a shop tab where you can get the book there. And then it is now on Amazon as well. So we can post those links in here later on after we're done.
Yeah. I'm Christy Matusiak, DC.
Yes. Christy Matusiak, Matusiak, DC.com.
Okay. So I put that one in the comments, and then
Thanks.
you can also get it on Amazon.
Yes.
Sorry. I know I always screw up your last name, and I do apologize.
It's all good. It's all good. We've had people call us Matasaki before. I'm like, that's not even close to phonetic, but
No. That's why, honestly, that's why I just call you Dr. Christy.
that works. It's just as comfortable. Yeah, it's so interesting as we were talking about the book and everything. It's really more for moms, of course, because I feel like we even in your situation, Dorothy, like even not being, the mom of a newborn necessarily, we tend to still take the brunt of that mental load on ourselves, whether it's innate or whether it just ends up that way. We end up taking the brunt of it. And so, of course, this is more geared towards us because we're the only ones who can be in this weird brain of ours. But I do truly believe that dads can read it too and just maybe have a glimpse into what it's like in our world, in our body with the hormonal shifts and then the new expectations that we put on ourselves. And then also like some of the content is for moving forward. Like once we get through some of that postpartum stuff and self-care for the mom and relationship suggestions in those early years, because we can't neglect our relationship too. Like we said, suddenly we become this mom and we forget that other people in our world exist. But then they can, of course, also read the content of like, breastfeeding struggles, weaning into, real food, sleep struggles, how to keep them healthy, and avoid antibiotics and, Tylenol and fever-reducing medications and avoid ear infections and all those kinds of things that I took for granted because luckily I have, medical knowledge behind all the education that I have in my world. I didn't have to rely on Dr. Google, but a lot of women do. And let's face it, Dr. Google often allows us to become alarmist, and it's not always true. And then it tends to create more overwhelm and more anxiety and fear instead of just being present in whatever they may be going through at that time. And so I bring forward a lot of like the natural remedies that can usually help babies and kids in those early days through a lot of like common conditions.
Right. And so when my nephew was first born, his mom had taken him to the chiropractor, and I had no idea why she would originally do that. I'm like, why would you need to take a kid to a chiropractor? Or baby. So I know why I go, but can you tell us a little bit more why it would be good and beneficial to take your baby to a chiropractor?
So I'm going to try and look up a picture if I can right now while I answer this question, because there's an exact reason why I have you would take your baby to a chiropractor, and that would be beautiful to see in picture form, but I'll answer that while I try to look for it. Sure. First off, the birth process, let's think about that. Like if they're a C-section delivery, that comes with another host of complications and challenges. But if they're a vaginal delivery, they get squished through a tiny little area, and their body has to maneuver in a bunch of different ways, and that can be a very traumatic process, which just purely from a chiropractic structural nervous system alignment perspective, that can be really difficult, and that can contribute to nursing difficulties. It can contribute to colic. It can contribute to like torticollis, where a baby can't like turn its head 100% the other way. And so there's a lot of that. And so just from that part alone, chiropractic can be really helpful for babies. Now, on the other hand, it's from my perspective, since I do so much more holistic based work, I'm also muscle testing, and I'm going through and doing some visceral manipulation to help pull stomachs down in different positions, energetically rebalance the emotional trauma that mom experienced during birth and delivery. Will transmit to the baby as well, not to mention anything that she may have gone through during the pregnancy. So there's a lot going into it. But let me see if I can find this picture really quick. Okay, here it is. So this is my third son when he was like a month old or so. And babies are squishy, but sometimes...
I do a screen share. Let me see
Well,
if
I
I
am
can.
not. I don't think you can because it's on my
Oh,
computer and I'm on my phone on here.
oh,
But I can just flip it around. So let's
all
see if I
right.
can hand manage this. Can we see this?
Yes.
Yeah.
What a
See,
cutie.
he's adorable, and it's a little complicated because his head shouldn't be like that. And so now, granted, it's not quite as bad as it looks because his entire spine is like rotated and shifted, and so his head just kind of went with it. But he's like reassuming a position that he obviously had and was comfortable with in utero. And so that right there is one reason to take your baby to a chiropractor, just from the structural perspective. But like I said, there's so much more to it within what I do to rebalance their whole body chemically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally, and physically.
Cool. Yeah, and to tell you the truth, I never even thought of that, and until I met you. Well, I guess though, my nephew's 19, but I didn't ask the why. I just went with it because I figured it wasn't my child, so I just went with it. But yeah,
Right.
that's a good thing for all these new moms out there, definitely, and that makes sense, because if your kid's squished like that, and imagine coming out of a hole that big,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
ew,
exactly. It can be a traumatic process, and
for mom too.
exactly. And the thing is, emotionally and physically, any trauma that mom endures when pregnant and, during delivery, the baby picks up. I mean, let's just like think about this logically speaking. You can't house a human being inside of your body for 9 months and have there not be a connection there.
Right.
And so just because they suddenly come out doesn't mean, oh, everything is good and you guys are completely independent now. That's not how it works. Like there's always that connection in some way. And energetically, a lot of what I will have to do sometimes is help support mom to best support the baby.
Right.
It's one of my benefits that I offer all my pregnant patients, actually, is as soon as I'm working through with them during their pregnancy, first postpartum visit, I check the baby for free because it gets me to see the baby because that's a little selfish. And I just know how important it is just like as soon as possible. Like I adjusted and treated all my kids within hours of their birth.
Right. Ah, that would be exciting.
Yeah.
Treating your kids. That would be exciting. Interesting. So, what would you say would be the favorite chapter in the book?
My favorite chapter is the self-care chapter. And I love all the chapters, of course. Like I said, if I had this supporting me and guiding me through like breastfeeding journey and all the stuff that we deal with as new moms, all that is valuable. But the self-care is what really is most important to me because like we talked about in the beginning, it's like we no longer feel our needs are important after a certain part. And I know this narrative is changing. I've talked to so many people and it's such a common thread now that you have to fill your own cup first. You have to put on your own metaphorical oxygen mask first. Otherwise, there's literally nothing that you have left to give to anybody else.
Right.
So this is a strong narrative now that's shifting, but it's not all the way gone because I think there's still something innate in us as mothers that when we give birth, it's like, oh, everything that I have and everything that I am is about this one little human being.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be. You can be more than that if you want to be.
And I'm sure though there's a fine line because you said sometimes you feel guilty because you shouldn't think or act a certain way, but the thing of it is it doesn't matter whether you just had the baby or not. I mean, those instances come up all through life, and then you just got to do the best you can.
Right. Like I said, even though this particular one in the future series, is towards this newly postpartum period in the first year or so of life, those first 5-ish chapters, I want to say, apply to pretty much everybody everywhere, whether you have kids or not. Obviously, mostly those who have some kind of family in some capacity. Like this morning, I was going out to a meeting and my 5-year-old like literally chased me out to the car and said, "Mommy, don't go. I want to go with you. I want to go with you. I want to go with you." And I had to literally pry his hands off my car so I wouldn't run over him trying to leave. These things happen, and it's sometimes challenging, especially when you're running late and you like really got to go. But it's like I had to somehow sit there and be present and look him in the eye and be like, "I love you very much. I'm not going that long. I'll be gone just a few hours and then I'll be back," and talk him through these things. Like those moments don't change from, when they're 6 weeks old to almost 6 years old. They just look a little different. And then you handle them a little differently.
Exactly. That is so good. So I hear that there is a contest going on too on your Facebook page. You
There
want to tell us a
is.
little bit about that?
Sure. And remind me, I should actually share that on LinkedIn as well. But if you share the post that I have announcing the publishing of the book with the Amazon link, so if you share that on your page and or you tag new moms that might benefit from the book, every share and every tag of someone else enters you to win a free book, which I will autograph for you. So if we could maybe, I don't know, I'll find a way to share that on this link as well. If anybody wants to, just do me a favor and make sure you tag me in your share so that I know it exists, so I can make sure to put you in the hat. Because if somebody shares it and then I don't know where to find it, I may not enter you appropriately.
Exactly. Full disclosure on that. She needs to know who you are to put you in the draw.
Yeah. So like and follow me too if I am not connected with you already.
That's right. And you really want to be connected with Dr. Christy because, like, she's amazing, and she always has. She has her own YouTube channel, Dr. Christy Cares, as well, which definitely some amazing tips on there. Anything from poop to, I forget what the last one was. I saw the last one and I thought, oh, that's good.
Last one may have been genetic.
Yes, genetics
stuff, genetics and illness, and something runs in my family. Well, nobody just runs in your family, kind of perspective.
Exactly. And it's not things that, some things we don't think about, and something like I was floored when you told me that how the mother was thinking during childbirth, and that how that affects the child even later on. And I was just like, stuff like that I didn't even think about. Not even a question that I thought to ask my mother. Like, how did you feel during birth, or how did you feel when you got pregnant? And I don't know. In my family, that's just not something we talk about. But
right, and those are really amazing conversations that I have with my patients. And if they know anything about their mother's pregnancy with them or their birth or anything like that, I can better serve them and better clear some of those things that may have been having an impact on them in their whole life that they just didn't even know it. And sometimes people don't know those circumstances, and that's okay. But if they do, it gives us other insights. Like, for instance, when I was pregnant with my second one, I was really stressed. I was very, we had a short sale in our condo. We were living with my parents in their second level for a little while. It was chaos, right? And I remember knowing what I know, sitting there going, I shouldn't be stressing out right now. So then I'm stressing about stressing, and that wasn't really good either. And so, like we said, he's a little bit more of my most intense child. Guarantee he picked up on some of that.
But it's refreshing because, okay, so as somebody who, as mere mortals who are not a doctor, who go through this to find, hey, and a doctor actually feels this way because we are human at the core of everything. It's just refreshing for us common folk. Hey, Carl.
Hi, Carl.
Thanks for joining us. It's refreshing that you're like, oh, you shouldn't be thinking that way. But, I'm sure, knowing you caught yourself very quickly and turned that around.
I tried. I don't had to tell you I was completely successful because I am human, and that's like I said, when you first asked me the question about the book, it's like, that's what I said. I don't really know if there's many people who've really written a book like this where really blended the perspectives of physician guide with, I'm in the crap with you guys and I get it. And we can't always expect, perfection because life is life and we are human beings.
True enough. So we're down to our last couple of minutes here. Christy, is there anything that you want to leave our viewers with? And we have Miss Nancy joining us. Thanks for joining us, Nancy.
Thanks for popping on. Last few things. I mean, if anybody watching knows anybody who's pregnant or has recently had a baby, I was at a networking meeting this morning and somebody said, we all should know people who have had babies now because we were just locked up for a year. Of course, people are having babies now. So if you know anybody who's had a baby in the recent past, please just set up a introduction for us. I'd be happy to provide anything that I can to support anyone in those kinds of positions. Also, good connections would be any OBs or midwives or doulas, anybody in those pediatricians, those kinds of camps. I'd love to chat with them and get the book out if I can. So thank you again for having me today. This was awesome.
My pleasure. My pleasure. And thank you to our amazing peeps out in the audience here. Thanks for joining us. And as always, thanks again for coming on, Dr. Christy. And go to Amazon right now and order your copy. I have never given birth, but I did order my copy of Coordinating the Chaos the other day, because I know there's more than just tips on there about newborns, and you definitely want to get over there and get your book ordered today.
Thank you so much, Dorothy.
You're welcome. Have a good day, guys.
Bye.